Hey guys, Rhonda here with RK3 Designs, and I've had a few customers ask me about doing a gray industrial concrete, I guess, inspired top. So we're gonna try to tackle that today. All right, so what I've done, I've taken a piece of MDF, I've routed the edges so that now my epoxy is gonna really roll over the edges and not cause surface tension because of a 90-degree angle. I try to do that in all my pieces so that I don't build a ridge as that epoxy starts to dry. I do that also to the underside so that as that epoxy rolls over, it kind of rolls under my edge and it doesn't form a lip or a ridge where that epoxy is starting to build up right there on that 90-degree edge. So everything's prepped. I've painted it with 2 coats of Behr paint and primer in one in Broadway, which is a black. You could also do a darker gray if you didn't want to do such a dark finish. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of prep this a little bit more before we add our epoxy. So I'm going to come in here and fog it with several colors of gray and a little bit of white. So the first one is charcoal gray. And I want to come in and just fog my edges a little bit so that as the material breaks over, I'm not going to have a hard line of black. Now I'm not doing a super hard line. I don't want it to be very evident that I've got a line here. Okay, so now I'm just gonna fog the top. This is ever so lightly. I don't wanna be able to see a line. I just want it to be kind of a fog, hence fogging. All right, Stone Coat Gray, not Stone Coat, Stone Gray. And now this is a lighter color. So I really just want it a little bit. Again, I'm just trying to give that concrete speckledy look almost. Alrighty, I'm gonna go with a little bit of white, tiny bit of white. I don't want to lighten this finish too much. There. And then I'm actually gonna come back in with a little bit of black. Now all I'm doing by adding all these colors is I'm just building depth in the layers. Okay, so now we're ready for the epoxy. All right, so I've got clear epoxy and I'm going to tint it ever so lightly with a little bit of black and a little bit of white because I just want it to be a light gray. Literally 2 drops. I don't want it to be really opaque. That's good. I can see through the epoxy and I can see the wood grain on my stick. That's how I know I've got a very opaque finish, or an opaque dye, I should say. Okay, so I really like the shade of black. It's gonna let me see through it and see the fogging that I've done on the surface. But I am gonna add just a tick of white to lighten it up a little bit, but I'm not going to stir it completely. I wanna have a little bit of marbling in there. All right. Before I mix this up, I want to let you guys see what I'm talking about it being marbleized here because I didn't mix up my white a lot. It naturally is kind of has separation in colors. Take my hand. You could also take a trowel at this point. I really like using my hand. Because I've not tinted this really opaque, you can see through this finish, through the epoxy, to the board. And I really like how you can see the marbling because I didn't stir up the white really well. Make sure I get my edges, because anybody knows my husband knows I need to get the edges. And that makes a lot of sense. When you walk into a kitchen, the first thing you see are your edges before you ever see the top of the countertops. And the fact that I use my hand to get my edges really helps me to take that epoxy and roll it with my fingers and make sure that that epoxy is up under the lip, and that helps that epoxy to roll over as it starts to self-level. All right, torch it a little bit. Now, I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up, but I can see through this down to the specks of the spray paint. I mean, honestly, I could really stop here, but I'm not going to. All right, so now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna chop a little bit of white spray paint and kind of give this a kind of a marbly type look, but more when I hit it with alcohol, you're gonna see what kind of effects we get. So I'm gonna prime my brush. I don't wanna go in with a clean, dry brush, because then what happens is if I just start chopping with a dry brush, I'm gonna actually be pulling more material off than I'm chopping in. All right, so I'm coming in with white, and I'm just gonna fog, and then I'm gonna come in with black. And I'm gonna do the same thing. All right, I'm gonna let it sit for just a minute. And the reason I like to let it sit is because it's gonna cause some really cool effects on its own, just because that spray paint is kind of fighting with the epoxy. So I kind of like that. All right, so now we're just gonna randomly chop, and also I'm gonna kind of get some crisscross going. Chop and crisscross. This finish will look really good in an industrial type decor, a man cave, something where you're trying to get a very matte finish, because we're gonna actually put a ultimate top coat on here, which is gonna give a natural matte look. Also, it's gonna increase the durability with that matte finish. Okay, so now that I've chopped, I'm gonna let it kind of fight a little bit more again, and then I'm gonna hit it with some alcohol. All right, here we go. Nothing about this finish has metallics in it, okay? So I'm using plain alcohol. My dyes were both non-metallic, and my spray paints were just regular gloss spray paint. I don't want any metallic in this finish. All right, so now I'm gonna just spritz over the top. Let it kind of do its thing, and then we'll go from there. Okay, guys, I really like this finish. I like the contrast of the white and the black and then the gray background. I also like how the alcohol has caused some fracturing and type of cells, but I definitely would stop here. This is my favorite, but I'm gonna go just one more step and kind of mute all this down. So no, if you're doing this for a customer and you like this step here, take a picture so that now you have what it looks like before you go to the next step. Or even better, video yourself doing it so that you know that at this stage of the game, this is what it looks like. As we go to the next stage, maybe your customer is not gonna like that part. You'll wanna know how you got this look, and now you've got it videoed. I've dried off my brush just a little bit. I've taken a lot of the white paint where I chopped it. I kind of just got the rest of the material out. Now I'm gonna pick areas that are really, really bright, maybe that I wanna tone down a little bit, and that's what I'm going to kind of mute. down a little bit. Because if you're really going for a matte finish and a very soft finish, you may not want all of that look of the cells that the spray paint created. I like that part, but maybe you're trying to go just a little more subtle, and that's where this comes in. Now I'm going to heat it. Now I made it just a little softer, and because I still have alcohol on the surface, you're still going to get a little bit of that fracturing look, but now I've really toned it down quite a bit. Now, also, I like to come in with fault lines. So I'm going to take some dye, and I'm going to put one more little drop. I have a tiny bit of resin left in my bucket. Looks like I only have a tiny little bit of dye as well. All right, I'm going to tint that, which now it's going to make it a lot more opaque than the original that I put down. And I'm going to make me some fault lines. Okay, so I'm going to come across here with just some lines. And when you're doing these small fault lines or crack lines, however you want to call it, be aware of where you're dragging them, because you don't want to come right in the middle of your piece with an X, all right? If you're going to create crosses, make sure it's kind of off to the side. And I'm getting some of them really, really thin. There, okay, I like that. Now I'm going to heat it up a little bit. This blob that I have here, I'm just going to kind of run with my finger. Actually, I'm going to rub that out because I don't quite want so much black right there. Just kind of rub this out. There we go. And just took that line away. And that's how quickly and easily you can fix mistakes. All right, so what I'm going to do is tilt this just a little bit. Now, if you see here, I kind of came in with a line and I made like a loop. I don't like loops because you're not going to see that naturally occur with cracks. So I'm going to kind of take that one out as well. Okay, now if you cannot tilt your piece that you're going to be pouring, don't tilt your sample board. You could do the same thing that I'm doing with a heat gun or a torch. All I'm going to do is get these cracks to soften just a little bit and move just a tiny bit. There, that's all I wanted to do. Gives it more of a realistic look, and as this piece starts to settle on its own, as it starts to self-level, these cracks are going to get very soft. So I'm really not worried about them being bold right now because they will soften. And then when we do our matte finish, they're really going to look natural. Okay, guys, as this thing keeps to just morphing and morphing and changing, I'm really liking it. This finish. And remember, we're still gonna put a matte coating, a top coat on this that's really gonna give it a honed look. So it's gonna take the shine and really lower it and make this look like a piece of stone or concrete inspired finish. So I'm gonna quit. I really like it. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. That way you'll be notified when we post videos. Also check out our website, RK3Designs.com, and our online course, Online Epoxy Pro. Until next time, remember, don't be scared, move forward, and be creative.